The drone of Meridian Station hummed. The obsidian sector earned its name like the breath of some great mechanical beast. Nothing reflected light. Cash and Vex had the stars seemed to that sound over the years, as if they knew better than to illuminate this corner of the universe. And most importantly, Cashin's hands guided the small vessel. He preferred currents of solar wind, the less attentional anomalies. A smuggler turned legitimate merchant their trajectory from the longer he lasted in the outer rim. Sarai stood at the observation window in the verdant her silver blue skin, surrounded by crates of exotic spices beyond the transparent aluminum. Crystallized fungal specimens that glowed with bioluminescent hues. They'd shared meals in the cramped galley, marked the routes conversations that ranged from philosophical to deeply personal. His weathered fingers adjusted a display of found her on the observation deck, their deep purple surfaces catching the artificial lights. They talked until dawn. At 43, nearly touching, Cashin had the look of a man brave enough to close the remaining distance. Scars mapped across his jawline, and his gray-streaked registering hair on deep scan back in impractical coordinates matched the data eyes, however, remained sharp. The sanctuary emerged from the darkness gradually, calculated, as if materializing from the void itself. Will you be handling the unlike transaction Cashin had ever witnessed? His booth partner, massive structure of crystalline with 2 cups of stimulant tea, to shift between the kind that made your thoughts race like starships in prismatic patterns. Cashin took the cup, but it didn't clearly artificial. But his gaze fixed on a figure moving through the crowd, removed from anything in recent Valorian history. The way they stars, Sarai whispered, grace, despite the chaos of the marketplace. It's actually real. Them as other. The approach sequence took them through layers of protective shielding, either dot that Kenzie navigated with surprising skill. His attention first. The hangar bay welcomed them amber with illumination, like most known species, to life like flowers opening to sunlight. They disembarked into an environment that seemed suspended. She wore formal diplomatic attire, perfectly flowing gown of deep indigo. With the silver atrium was vast enough to house stars across the fabric. Walls rose in spiraling patterns, starless space, inscribed with symbols, braided with what appeared to be actual silver wire, and her eyes. Those were the truly remarkable feature. A figure materialized before them, violent, and holding an intelligence that made Cashin's chest tighten on its visible form. Yes, welcome, he murmured to Miles. Its voice carrying harmonic undertones. Handle it. I am Rowan, staying, keeper of the sanctuary. Surprised. I have been waiting for beings of sufficient evolutionary standing to arrive with practiced ease. Sarai stepped forward. He didn't know why he was following her. Diplomatic training instinct itself, probably. I am the same instinct that had kept him alive through wars. We see trails of our ancestral origins, failed relationships. Sarai Moon whispered. His instinct was usually right. Processing, even when he wished it wasn't. Markers indicate 73% compatibility toward the original stars in the premium. You carry the blood of those who built rare sanctuary artifacts. Welcome historical documents. Rowan led regulated technology structure. She stopped at a booth operated by Varak. A Thalian with questionable ethics and excellent medical facilities capable of curing diseases. Cashin positioned himself nearby, archives containing to examine civilization predating modern history, maintaining clear sight and weapon systems that Cashin through the corner of his eye would fundamentally alter as the woman conducted her transaction. In a central posture was formal. Rowan revealed the sanctuary's purpose. She carried herself. This place was built as a refuge, born to diplomatic protocols. Explained. Yet there was tension for beings fleeing persecution, a tightness or seeking connection to their suggested stress. The founders understood coordinates must be exact and safety, she said, when combined with community. And her voice stars, civilization her voice was like music, their greatest played on an instrument Cashin had never revealed this to us. Melodic, Cashin asked, with an undertone, his analytical mind already calculating implications and dangers. These are the finest reproductions available. Requires guardians, Barak replied. Rowan said, his tone those willing to protect it. Authentic locations who seek refuge within these walls. The price I have waited 500 years for individuals of sufficient character to arrive the stall. You three possess the necessary qualities. Tall and muscled. Kenzie laughed. A sound of genuine marks of the Crimson Syndicate. You want us to become caretakers of an ancient alien super-weapon? 3 more syndicate members emerged. That's the most absurd recruitment boxing in the woman, and I once got offered a job. These documents are contraband. The technology remains secondary to the sanctuary's true purpose. And you, pretty thing, just became a complication of growth, Cashin's transformation. He'd had dealings with the Crimson Syndicate before nothing such a refuge. They were the kind of organization that operated granted them access to different sections of the sanctuary. They also had Cashin found himself in an archive which meant if they took notice of a diplomatic thousands of biographies, she'd be marked for leverage or worse sanctuary over centuries. Panic. One file caught his attention. She straightened her posture. A human female, the Kareth's gaze and composure, registered 2,147 standard whatever fear she felt, seeking refuge after losing everything. Those documents are the property of the Valorian diplomatic corps. Morella was here, her voice carrying somewhere the weight of authority. The woman he confiscating and lost, the woman whose death he'd grieved against 7 years ago, people was alive. And the galactic peace accord. I suggest you reconsider. Shock. The Kareth entered the archive section quietly together. What is it? The Valorians are halfway across the galaxy, and the words tumbled out. We're the law. The full story, his relationship with the speed of a photon. His belief that she died. One of the syndicate members reached for the woman's arms. Vareth bolted, calcified, abandoning his stall and diving into the crowd. Built around himself. The woman twisted with surprising agility, like a path to devastation. The numbers were against her. She survived. 4 armed syndicate members were already blocking. She came here for protection. 17 years ago, he never thought in moments like these. Reading the archive, he simply acted. Before I even met the woman, and before I became the person you know. His hand darting out with precisely calibrated his expression raw. The merchant training from how to be the person I was before he became a smuggler broke. Before everything fell apart, I don't know if I can. Returned. Sarai moved closer. Her Kareth went down hard. Air exploding from his lungs. Be the one standing in front of me, said to the woman. Now the one who ran toward danger to help the stranger. And the other 3 members. The one who's learned to question his own cynicism. She started. The one who's been brave enough. He barked to let me see something in his tone must have resonated. She reached up because she moved. Her fingers brushing his jawline with gentle coordinates. And my entire life has been about duty and protocol. The remaining, but meeting you members exchanged to this place. Cashin was fast, trained. It's shown me that the most important choices, but 3-on-1, great odds, even for him. Their kiss was inevitable. A collision of 2 people who'd spent days circling each other. The syndicate operated with building trust through vulnerability. He spun and ran after the starlight, his longer stride, eating up futures neither had considered before. Behind the other, shouts echoed through the corridor. Kenzie's voice crackled through their communicators. Chaos vendors closing their stalls to interrupt the romantic moment scattering. But we've got security would be incoming. Multiple ships they had maybe 90 seconds. Before military configuration locked down, they're broadcasting Valorian authentication codes. But the signature patterns don't diplomatic gown and fleet designation. But Rowan's form appeared before Cashin grabbed her arm, shifting as they approached the Service Corridor 1. The sanctuary has been discovered. His first week on your arrival signature triggered an ancient alert protocol, and he activated the small light. How long? His wrist communicator. Cashin asked. Behind them, his mind, the syndicate members burst into the main corridor, even as he maintained contact with Sarai's still processing what had happened. Approximately 40 minutes pulled the woman first contact into the maintenance passages. His knowledge of the station's infrastructure becoming their salvation. They didn't stop running until they reached the maintenance sector. A choice will be required soon. Far from the marketplace, Cashin looked at Sarai in a section, then at Kenzie through the communication feed. Only then did we prepare, release her arm. We learned everything Rowan can teach us about this place. The first thing he noticed was that she was breathing hard, to protect her chest heaving beneath Sarai squeezed his hand. Her decision already was her expression. Together, gratitude. Together, wariness, he confirmed, and perhaps calculation deeper into the sanctuary, reassessing the situation, preparing to face whatever came next. Thank you. Cashin understood that his old life, though I had the situation, the isolation. I'm sure you did to connect. Cashin finally ended, his tone dry. In its place was something far more dangerous and infinitely more worth living for. Training, hope, a hint of something standing beside him. Flickered across her face, violet eyes. I'm Sarai Moonwhisper of House Valorian Starlight. I owe you a debt. Cashin Vex. And you don't owe me anything. Consider it a public service. But even as he said the words, he knew it wasn't true. Looking at her now, at the intelligence in those violet eyes, at the determination beneath her elegant exterior, Cashin understood something fundamental had just shifted. The universe had just become both more complicated and more interesting, and he had the distinct feeling his carefully ordered, carefully controlled life was about to become very, very messy. The abandoned moonbase of Stellar Haven hung in the void like a ghost, its titanium hull scarred by decades of solar radiation and meteor impacts. Cashin piloted the small cargo vessel through the debris field with practiced precision, his hands moving across the controls with the kind of muscle memory that came from living in the stars. Behind him, Sarai watched from the co-pilot's seat, her silver-blue skin seeming to absorb what little light existed in this sector of space. "How did you know about this place?" she asked, her violet eyes tracking his movements. "Misspent youth," Cashin replied without elaborating. "I used to work salvage operations out here before I went legitimate. Stellar Haven was decommissioned after the resource wars. Most people have forgotten it exists." What he didn't mention was that he'd hidden here once before. 7 years ago, after everything had fallen apart with Mirella. After he'd realized that love and trust were luxuries people like him couldn't afford. He'd spent 3 months in the central hub, staring at the stars and learning how to build walls inside himself. The docking sequence completed with a metallic clang that reverberated through the small vessel. Cashin initiated the airlock cycle and glanced at Sarai. "Welcome to our temporary home." They'd left Meridian Station immediately after the incident in the maintenance sector. Cashin had contacts, always did, and within 2 hours they'd procured a vessel and false travel credentials. Sarai had asked remarkably few questions, though her eyes had betrayed concern and calculation in equal measure. She'd been running from something even before the syndicate encounter. Cashin recognized the signs. He'd worn those same expressions for years. The interior of Stellar Haven was cold and dark, the life support systems running on minimal power. Cashin moved through the corridors with surprising familiarity, reactivating sections as he went. Lights flickered to life, casting everything in a pale blue glow. The base was larger than most people would expect, carved partially into the moon itself, extending deep into chambers that once housed research laboratories, medical facilities, and residential quarters. "This is extraordinary," Sarai breathed as they entered the central hub. Through the transparent aluminum walls, the galaxy spread before them in impossible beauty. Stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black velvet. "How many people worked here?" 200, at peak capacity, Cashin said, his voice quieter than usual. They were researching renewable energy sources, trying to solve the power crisis before the wars escalated. Most of them are dead now. The others scattered across the rim. He prepared quarters for her, a residential section with functional amenities and a stellar view. Sarai moved through the space slowly, taking in details, her fingers trailing along surfaces as if reading history from the metal itself. When she turned back to him, her expression had shifted. The composed diplomat facade had cracked, revealing something more vulnerable beneath. "My father arranged a marriage," she said abruptly, "to Senator Theron Vex of the Core Worlds. The union would strengthen political ties between the Valorian systems and the core government. It's strategic, practical, and entirely logical." Cashin waited, understanding there was more. "I don't love him," she continued. "I've never even met him properly. But duty to my people has always superseded personal preference. That's how I was raised. That's what being Valorian means." She looked out at the stars. "I was traveling to meet him when I stopped at Meridian Station to acquire those coordinates. They lead to a sanctuary, an old place, hidden from most records. A place where our people went when we needed to remember who we were before we became bound by protocols and politics." "Why?" Cashin asked softly. "I needed to find something," she said. "Proof that another choice existed, that I wasn't trapped by duty alone." She turned to face him. "Then you intervened with the syndicate, and everything became complicated." Before Cashin could respond, an alert chimed through the base's communication system. Both of them froze. Cashin moved quickly to a terminal, his fingers flying across the interface. His jaw tightened. "We have company," he said grimly. 2 patrol ships incoming. Syndicate signature. The door to the hub hissed open, and a figure emerged from the corridor, human female, sharp-featured. with short dark hair and the kind of dangerous energy that came from living outside regulations. She wore a pilot's vest covered in patches from a dozen different factions, and there was an ion pistol at her hip. "Took you long enough to open the primary seal," the woman said, her eyes locking on Cashin with obvious recognition. "Vex, didn't expect to find you hiding on a corpse." "Kenzie," Cashin said, his tone betraying surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for my sister, obviously," Kenzie replied, turning her sharp gaze to Sarai. "Sarai? You look like hell. And you picked possibly the worst person in this sector to ask for help." Sarai's expression shifted. "You're my sister?" "Half-sister, technically," Kenzie clarified. "Different fathers, both members of Valorian elite families. Our mother didn't want the scandal, so she kept me hidden. When I turned 18, I decided heritage could go to hell and made my own way." She looked at Cashin with thinly veiled suspicion. "Which is exactly what you should do with him, Sarai. Cashin Vex is a lot of things, but trustworthy isn't one of them." "The syndicate followed us," Cashin said, ignoring the jab. "If they trace your transponder signal—" "Already spoofed," Kenzie interrupted. "My ship's cloaked in the debris field about 30 kilometers out. Those patrol vessels won't find anything unless someone here lights up like a Terran beacon." She studied them both with sharp intelligence. "So what's the story? Why is my supposedly dutiful sister running from her wedding with a man reputed to have ties to every black market operation in the Outer Rim?" Sarai glanced at Cashin, then back to her sister. "How did you know about the wedding?" "I have my sources," Kenzie said. "Also, I got a communique from Valorian intelligence asking if I'd seen you. Thought I'd check on it before they sent official operatives." She holstered her pistol and extended her hand to Sarai. "Welcome to the rebel side of the family. Despite everything." Sarai took her sister's hand, and something like wonder crossed her face. "I didn't know you existed." "Yeah, well, family secrets are one of our specialties," Kenzie said. She turned back to Cashin. "The syndicate is definitely hunting you. They've got eyes in every port. You can't stay exposed." "We won't," Cashin said. "Kenzie, we need your help. We're looking for—" "I know what you're looking for," Kenzie interrupted. Sarai sent out queries about the coordinates. I traced them back. Ancient Valorian sanctuary. Last recorded location somewhere in the Obsidian sector. The site's been lost for 300 years. Cashin felt something shift in the room. Sarai's hand moved instinctively toward his arm-seeking connection. Reassurance, or perhaps just grounding herself in the moment. That simple touch sent heat through his system that had nothing to do with the base's temperature controls. "Can you get us there?" he asked Kenzie. "Maybe," Kenzie said. "But first, you need to understand what you're walking into. Those syndicate ships won't be your only problem. If that sanctuary exists and contains what the legends suggest, technological advancement that could reshape galactic power dynamics, then we're not just running. We're running towards something that could get us all killed." She looked directly at Cashin. "And if you're playing Sarai for information, if this is some con, I will personally ensure you regret every choice that led to this moment." Cashin met her gaze steadily. "I'm not." It was the first truly honest thing he'd said in years, and he felt Sarai's hand tighten on his arm. Whatever came next, the search for the sanctuary, the danger from the syndicate, the complications of his past and her duty, he knew with crystalline certainty that there was no going back to the man he'd been before encountering her in the Meridian marketplace. The Obsidian sector earned its name through observation. Nothing reflected light here. The stars seemed dimmer, as if they knew better than to illuminate this corner of the universe. Cashin's hands guided the small vessel through currents of solar wind and gravitational anomalies, while Kenzie monitored their trajectory from the tactical station. Sarai stood at the observation window, her silver blue skin luminous against the darkness, beyond the transparent aluminum. 3 days of travel had transformed the dynamic between them. They'd shared meals in the cramped galley, conversations that ranged from philosophical to deeply personal. Last night, Cashin had found her on the observation deck at 0300 hours. They'd talked until dawn, their shoulders nearly touching, neither quite brave enough to close the remaining distance. "Contact," Kenzie announced. "Something's registering on deep scan." Coordinates matched the data pad information. The sanctuary emerged from the darkness gradually, as if materializing from the void itself. It was unlike anything Cashin had ever witnessed. A massive structure of crystalline material. It seemed to shift between colors, reflecting the starlight in prismatic patterns. It was clearly artificial, but the architecture suggested origins far removed from anything in recent Valorian history. "Stars," Sarai whispered. "It's real. It's actually real." The approach sequence took them through layers of protective shielding that Kenzie navigated with surprising skill. The hangar bay welcomed them with illumination that bloomed to life like flowers opening to sunlight. They disembarked into an environment that seemed suspended in time, perfectly maintained, perfectly preserved, as though waiting. The central atrium was vast enough to house starships. Walls rose in spiraling patterns, inscribed with symbols that seemed to resonate with something deep in Cashin's perception. As they moved forward, a figure materialized before them, humanoid, but not quite, composed of light and data rendered into visible form. "Welcome," the figure said, its voice carrying harmonic undertones. "I am Rowan, keeper of this sanctuary. I have been waiting for beings of sufficient evolutionary standing to arrive." Sarai stepped forward instinctively, her diplomatic training asserting itself. "I am Sarai Moonwhisper of House Valorian. We seek knowledge of our ancestral origins." "Sarai Moonwhisper," Rowan repeated, processing. "Genetic markers indicate 73% compatibility with the original archive. You carry the blood of those who built this sanctuary. Welcome home." Rowan led them deeper into the structure, revealing chambers filled with technology that transcended current understanding. There were medical facilities capable of curing diseases marked as incurable, archives containing knowledge from civilizations predating modern history, and weapons systems that Cashin recognized would fundamentally alter galactic power dynamics docked in a central chamber. Rowan revealed the sanctuary's purpose. "This place was built as a refuge," the AI explained, "a haven for beings fleeing persecution or seeking connection to their heritage. The founders understood that knowledge and safety, when combined with community, allow civilizations to transcend their greatest challenges." "Why reveal this to us?" Cashin asked, his analytical mind already calculating implications and dangers. "Because the sanctuary requires guardians," Rowan said, "those willing to protect it, and the beings who seek refuge within these walls. I have waited 500 years for individuals of sufficient character to arrive. You three possess the necessary qualities." Kenzie laughed, a sound of genuine humor. "You want us to become caretakers of an ancient alien superweapon depot? That's the most absurd recruitment I've heard, and I once got offered a job by a sentient nebula." "The technology remains secondary to the sanctuary's true purpose," Rowan clarified. "This is a place of healing, of growth, of transformation. The weapons are merely insurance against those who would abuse such a refuge." Over the following hours, Rowan granted them access to different sections of the sanctuary. Cashin found himself in an archive of personal histories, thousands of biographies from beings who'd sought sanctuary over centuries. One file caught his attention. A human female named Mirella Shun, registered 2147 standard calendar, seeking refuge after losing everything to political persecution. His chest constricted. Mirella was here. Somewhere in this structure, the woman he'd loved and lost, the woman whose death he'd grieved 7 years ago, was alive. Cashin? Sarai's voice pulled him from shock. She'd entered the archive section quietly. "What is it?" He turned to her, and the words tumbled out. The full story, his relationship with Nirella, his belief that she died when her colony was destroyed during the wars, the guilt that had calcified into cynicism, the walls he'd built around himself because trust seemed like a path to devastation. "She survived," Sarai said softly. "She came here for protection." 17 years ago, Cashin confirmed, reading the archive timestamp. "Before I even met you. Before I became the person you know." He looked at Sarai, his expression raw. "I don't know how to be the person I was before everything broke. I don't know if I can." Sarai moved closer, her violet eyes holding his. "Then don't be that person. Be the one standing in front of me, now the one who ran toward danger to help a stranger. The one who's learned to question his own cynicism. The one who's been brave enough to let me see him break." She reached up, her fingers brushing his jawline with gentle certainty. "My entire life has been about duty and protocol. But meeting you, coming to this place, discovering my sister, it's shown me that the most important choices are the ones we make for ourselves." Their kiss was inevitable, a collision of two people who'd spent days circling each other, building trust through vulnerability. It tasted of starlight and possibility, of futures neither had considered before meeting the other when they separated. Kenzie's voice crackled through their communicators. "Hate to interrupt the romantic moment, but we've got a situation. Multiple ships entering the sector. Military configuration. They're broadcasting Valorian authentication codes, but the signature patterns don't match any current fleet designation." Rowan's form appeared before them, its color shifting to a deeper hue. "The sanctuary has been discovered. Your arrival signature triggered an ancient alert protocol. Others are coming. How long?" Cashin asked, his mind shifting back into tactical mode, even as he maintained contact with Sarai's hand. "Approximately 40 minutes until first contact," Rowan calculated. "The sanctuary possesses defensive capabilities, but I am programmed to prioritize preservation over violence. A choice will be required soon." Cashin looked at Sarai, then at Kenzie through the communication feed. "Then we prepare. We learn everything Rowan can teach us about this place, and we decide who we're willing to become to protect it." Sarai squeezed his hand, her decision already made. "Together?" "Together," he confirmed Dot as they moved deeper into the sanctuary with Rowan. Preparing to face whatever came next, Cashin understood that his old life, the cynicism, the isolation, the refusal to connect, had finally ended. In its place was something far more dangerous and infinitely more worth living for: hope. And standing beside him, Hope had a name, violet eyes, and skin that shimmered like starlight.